Good afternoon and welcome to the Griffith Industry Insight Series, where we harness the wisdom and experience of our community of mentors and industry partners to make career development learning accessible to all. So here we are today on just a couple of hours before we lock down again in Queensland, and not even a lockdown can slow down the career development learning of the Industry Insight Series. So for those who I haven't met yet, my name is Nicole Graham, and I, with my colleague Rita Crowley, look after the Griffith Industry Mentoring Program. Before we begin this afternoon, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are gathered today, and to pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging, and also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Just a bit of housekeeping as we get started. So you heard at the start that the session is being recorded. You will notice that you will not be able to access your microphone or your camera. There is a Q&A icon down at the bottom of the screen. So please locate that and pop any questions you might have for our moderator or our panelists there. They're very eager to respond to your questions. And if you would like to contact us after the session, please use the email address industrymentoringprogram@griffith.edu.au. And now moving on to our agenda for this evening. I won't read through all of it because I know you're very eager to hear from our moderator and our panelists, but just a sort of a feel of how events will run. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Timo Dietrich, a behavioral architect who collaborates to create social marketing programs that help people, communities, and planet. His work has impacted thousands of lives, and he's trained thousands of professionals and students through his work in industry and in the classroom here at Griffith University. Timo, thanks for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm super excited to moderate today's session. I'm the engagement director at social marketing at Griffith, which is the world's largest university-based social marketing research center, not to be confused with social media marketing. What we do is we co-create effective solutions to society's most wicked problems using our co-create, build, and engage process. Yeah, and like Nicole said, I'm the moderator for today's sessions, and let me tell you, you're all in for a treat. We're certainly dealing with a new breed of customers today, simply because we're exposed to so many messages on so many channels. And all of this has obviously just increased since COVID. And today is a great reminder where we're probably all going to spend again more time on our screens. So with that in mind, I wanted to get you to briefly think about, well, what actually captures your attention? You know, what makes you pause and think as you're browsing online or you're going through life? What resonates with you when you scroll, for example, through a newsfeed? How many organizations are popping to mind right now? Please let us know in the chat if anything is coming to mind. I'd love to hear, but sometimes it's really difficult because, again, there's information overload. So those organizations, though, that are cutting through in terms of reach, engagement, and also ultimately benefiting their bottom line, they have embraced this notion of being authentic. And this is obviously our topic today, marketing in the age of authenticity. And what does it mean to be authentic? Well, when we look at the Cambridge Dictionary, it says, well, it's the quality of being real or true. So in other words, people appreciate if organizations are genuine, rather than putting up this sort of corporate facade. But even if you rock that authentic part, you're still ultimately competing with all major sort of corporations that are out there that have probably way more money than you will ever have to get in front of those very same consumers that you might be also chasing. So the question is really, how do you stand out from the crowd, the clutter, and the noise that we all as consumers sort of experiencing? And that's what we want to explore with, well, 4 really amazing speakers. So it's an honor to have all of them here today because I think they all know what authenticity actually means, and they do it in their work daily. and they know how to engage this sort of new breed of customers that are overwhelmed. And I think this is one of those sessions where the quality of speakers is just sensational. And I know all of them come from very different walks of life, and they're working in very different sort of contexts and challenges, but they are obviously all very good at creating engaging content that not just reaches people, but also gets them to talk and ultimately also helps them with their bottom line. So who do I have here with me today? Well, we got Natalie, the managing director from Lemon Tree Marketing at the Gold Coast. We got Tim Baxter, the director of growth marketing acquisition at Who Gives a Crap. We got Louise Firth, head of marketing at Anglicare Southern Queensland. And we got Mali Hanun, founder and owner of the Cedar and Pine Bar in Wynnum, Brisbane. So just to remind you of the format, each one of them will now speak for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to give them a little bit of a more grand introduction each as well, but for about 5 minutes, give or take, and talk a little bit about their approach to business and marketing and what authenticity actually means for them. And then following this, we will jump into Q&A session with all speakers. So you as the audience are encouraged to obviously drop in questions at any point in time when you hear the speakers present. And then I will sort of curate these questions together with the team here and put them forward in the Q&A session. All right, let me introduce the first speaker with a couple more sentences, which is Natalie. And Natalie Carosi is the founder and director of Lemon Tree Marketing. I really tried to put this Italian spin here on my pronunciation, as Natalie is actually from Italy, she told me. Although she lived most of her life in Venezuela. And she has been in Australia, I think, since she's 14, and started the Lemon Tree agency almost a decade ago. And what Lemon Tree does, it's an agency that helps businesses of different shapes and sizes with their marketing endeavors and helps them to create and evolve their brand to connect, engage, and inspire those audiences that they're seeking to reach. So Natalie, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Timo, for the intro. So yeah, I have a few things I want to share with you in terms of marketing in the age of authenticity from an agency's perspective. Sometimes it might look like I'm reading because I've made some notes because I could get carried away because I could go on forever with this topic. But I guess where to start is let's clear things up first. So the biggest misconception when we talk about a brand is that people think, it's your logo, it's your product. But in reality, it's not your logo, it's not your product, it's not your name. It's really the foundation upon which your entire business is built upon. It's that feeling that people get about your product or service. And it's a collection of all the perceptions in the mind of the consumer. So with that said, there's been plenty of studies that have been created recently or over the past 5-10 years that consumers' expectations for brands are higher than ever. So what that means is they want brands to have a positive contribution to society, have user power to help bring people together towards a common goal, raise the moral standards and connect with consumers. So when we talk about, age of authenticity is creating that connection. And from an agency perspective, I guess how we define connection is when a consumer trusts a brand, aligns with their values and their beliefs. It understands and meets their wants and needs, which then turns into that engagement with the brand, whether it's through social media, and then the loyalty for the products and services and sharing it with the community, being proud that they support a specific brand. So working with both brands that are, born through a purpose-led or that are existing brands that need to then kind of look back to be able to cater for this new need of, expecting more for brands. It's where we kind of say, people have the BS detectors stronger than ever. So if a brand operates at the level of values and beliefs, but those have been bolted on versus backed into the brand, there will be a disconnect and the brand will lose the credibility. So it will not come through as authentic. And this is particularly challenging for existing businesses where they have to go back and reassess, what are their values, what are the purpose, what's the promise? and how it's going to deliver that promise. It needs to be, when you go through this process, you need to be very careful that it really is going to be aligned through the whole company, and it's not too far-fetched, because then it will backfire, be perceived as not being authentic. So it's important that purpose-led businesses articulate, communicate, and demonstrate their values throughout every customer experience, making sure that every effort and decisions are taken by, whether it's the leaders, the employees, suppliers, partners, shareholders, and the wider community, fully encapsulates and transmits those values. What we find, those are sometimes our clients will be like, yep, these are my values, and really go into it, but they still really focus on that sale and conversion. Because with so much access to personal data, online behavior metrics, and analytics tools, we've become too focused on things like personalization and attribution and conversion that are really aimed at that pointy end of the funnel that is about the purchase. So really forget about how to build a strong brand and meaningful connections. Social media ranks as the key channel that gives brands the opportunity to connect with customers. And that really has opened an opportunity for brands to really open the curtains to the operations, so people can see their purpose and values are really deep-seated in their product, their service, their people, and their marketing. So just to kind of close it off, I think, if anything, with the digital age has made it even more important to focus on creating a well-known and easily recognizable brand that cuts through the noise, has a really clear and compelling point of view, and delivers on what they promise with consistency and excellence. That's me.
Is that a wrap? Boom.
Yeah.
I was, so German for everyone. I told them you cannot go longer than 5 minutes. So I think now everyone really took that to heart, and you probably went shorter than that, which is great. So let me maybe throw one follow-up question at you, because I think it all, what you say obviously is absolutely spot on. And I think it sounds good, and I don't think anyone would argue with it. But when it comes to spending money, let's say with you as an agency, that's probably when it does hurt a lot of organizations, because they don't see that immediate return on investment. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit in terms of how do you, I guess, then convince them of the value of needing to do this, particularly if you see that in the end it's so bottom funnel focused and everyone just thinks, let's just get on with the purchase here,
Yeah, so luckily we have case studies, and Deloitte has actually made a really good case study that brands that invest in brand building are 7 times more successful or generating revenue than those who don't. So when it comes down to talking about, return on ad spend or return on investment, it really is all made through the case studies where show, brands like Patagonia or Who Gives a Crap, they, they're able to maintain that loyalty and better business by actually being purpose-led and investing in developing their brand. And sales is really a consequence of that.
Awesome, great. And always good to have the case studies ready to go to make the business case more viable, to get somebody to open the pockets as well. I think it's important. But yeah, look, we'll hopefully have a bit of a follow-up conversation around the importance of branding as well in our Q&A, because I think a lot of the different speakers will touch upon this importance of what you just sort of highlighted as well. So let's move on to our next presenter. Tim tells me that he has had a keen eye on profit for purpose businesses from an early age. He already co-founded a social enterprise group and started an online eco-friendly textbook marketplace whilst at university. And then he consulted for a while, e-commerce, travel, and creative services. But now he's the director of marketing acquisition at Who Gives a Crap, a company that's selling eco-friendly toilet paper that donates 50% of its profits to build sanitation projects in developing countries. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Timo. Thanks everyone for jumping along to today's session. So we can jump into it, Timo, on the next slide. So as Timo introduced, we sell toilet paper, of all things, a very boring product, which we've tried to make into a delightful experience to use, and then delightful experience to use to build profits, to build toilets and sanitation projects in developing countries. So it's a very simple premise, which is we take 50% of the sales that come from toilet paper purchases, and donate it to organizations like WaterAid, who know how to facilitate the building of toilets and sanitation projects in the developing world. And so we deal with a very sensitive subject, which many people don't like to talk about. And so from the day one with the naming of our brand of Who Gives a Crap and how we communicate with the customers is around how do we make this a fun and playful experience to participate and interact with. And so we've had to make sure that's not only built on the outside for what the customer sees, but it has to come from within the company first. So as Natalie mentioned, people's BS radars are very finely tuned these days. And if you try and work around that and trick people, they'll find out very, very quickly. So we have this attitude that it really needs to begin with the people in the business first, and then that will then outwardly show through the communications you have. So whether it's doing a really big marketing campaign or a small one, it has to show through the entire process. So on the next slide is an example of how we think about the process from a very small end all the way up to the very big end. So this is an email that you get when you make an order at Who Gives a Crap. And so typically you would get an email which says your order is shipped and it's coming to you. But we thought, how can we change this piece of communication to be somewhat enjoyable or a little bit cheeky to interact with? And so we used a very common theme that a lot of people see in social media, which is your order is now in a relationship. It's officially off the shelf and coming towards you. And so it's something that we actually get almost more PR and social kind of mentions, this one email, this one piece of marketing, compared to a lot of the big marketing efforts we do as a company. And it really does show that when you filter through your authentic kind of values as a company into the small things, it really shows. And so what I'll do is I'm going to run through a couple of examples of how this actually comes about as a company before it comes to marketing. So on the next slide, you'll see a piece of communication we released probably around a year ago to our customers. And feel free to read this as I'm talking along. But basically, we found ourselves in a tricky situation where we didn't have the capacity to get back to our customers in a timely way. And we thought, okay, how can we send, we could send a lot of emails, we could try and reach out to people individually. But we realized that it was the best thing to do was actually just to say, hey, we're in a tricky situation. We've got a lot of people who are sick. We're not feeling very well. We're under capacity and we're really sorry, but we'll get back to you really quickly. And this was a really clear example of how, as a company, we would rather be honest with the customer than try and create something fancy and big and large and try and find a complicated way. And as a result, we had a huge positive response. So you'll see the comments on the right are examples of the fact that people don't really mind having a tricky situation to deal with, like whether their product is not going to be on time or whether their tickets aren't answered. What they really want is a brand that actually cares for the real values that people stand for. And so often being authentic doesn't mean you have to do an outwardly fancy piece of marketing. You just have to act like someone that you want to be friends with. And for most of us, we want to be friends with people who are honest, upfront, caring, fun to be around, and are true to who they are. And if you can create a brand, a team that envelops and takes on those values, it will shine through in the marketing. And so the last example here to show you today is how we actually build this as a company. So I could have kind of gone through a whole bunch of marketing techniques and a whole bunch of marketing examples we use, but what I really wanted to preach is the fact that authenticity comes through the people first as a culture of a business. And so an example of how we do this as a business is last year when Corona really kind of hit quite hard, COVID hit quite hard, we were all pretty pooped, pardon the pun. We'd had numerous sellouts and the company was going through a lot of changes. We hired 35 people in 1 week. And it's just one of those things where the company was very tired. And so what they did is they gave everyone a week off work, paid leave, and then a second week of work, working at a slower pace than normal. And so what this allowed us to do is we actually were allowed to take rest, regather our thoughts and regain composure, and then get back to work. And this type of activity then falls through into the marketing we do, in the customer service that we do, in the logistics and the inventory, and allows the company to then communicate with their customers in a real authentic way. And by actually releasing this information to the public, we've influenced a number of other businesses to do the same. So instead of going all fancy to be like, here's the best marketing thing you can do, I think to create an authentic brand, the best thing you can do is focus on you, if you're a sole trader or sole business owner, or the team, to make sure you create a culture that is real and people want to hang out with. And that will often shine through in the marketing material. So on the last slide here, it basically is the exemplifier of that. So if you can create a culture that exemplifies being authentic to the values of the business, so whether it's being cheeky, whether it's being upfront, whether it's being honest, you can create anything from a billboard, you know, the biggest campaign you can have, or you can make an email. Regardless, the customers are actually going to want to talk about you. And if someone said to us, you know, that we're going to create a brand where people want to take Instagram photos of their toilet paper in the shape of a love heart, people would think you're dreaming. But people crave personal brands that care about them as customers. And as Natalie mentioned, all of her points were spot on. And the best way to do that is to focus on the culture of your business or your team first, and it will shine through in any marketing that you do. So I would say, yeah, my advice for anyone who's kind of really wanting to work in a space where they feel like it's authentic marketing is don't worry about the marketing itself. Start from the inside first, and it will work regardless.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Tim. That's really great. And, you know, as a father of two very young children, poo is a big topic in our household. So I think I'm very envious for you that you get to speak about that all day, every day, and really live out your inner childhood dreams.
Yeah, I get to use the word bum a lot.
Fantastic. No, great. Thank you so much. That's been excellent. I'm sure there's many more questions for you in the Q&A as well that are coming. But we'll move on and to our next speaker, who is Louise Firth, the head of marketing for Anglicare Southern Queensland. Louise is a branding and marketing specialist with extensive experience in marketing and comms across a variety of business to business, business to customer, and not-for-profit organizations in Australia, but also abroad. And she's passionate about finding a brand's purpose, executing storytelling campaigns that really can drive change in people's lives. And she will share her insights today on how she manages the transformation of a 150-year-old brand, which I personally think is super exciting. So Louise, over to you, and forgive me for making this intro slide for you. I hope it's not off brand.
Oh, it'll do, it's fine.
Moving on quickly.
No, it's all good. Thanks, Timo, for that intro. So as Timo mentioned, I'm from Anglicare Southern Queensland. So we are one of the largest not-for-profit health and community services providers in Queensland. There's actually 3 Anglicares in Queensland, but we just cover the southern region. And really for us, marketing authentically is about telling stories. So we've got about 50,000 clients, we've got 3,000 staff, 600 volunteers, and we do services from country to coast for anyone from, you know, a child in foster and kinship care right through to a 100-year-old in one of our nursing homes, or women experiencing homelessness, and young people needing to kind of get back on track. So our organisation's story started 150 years ago in Brisbane when 5 determined women founded a female and infants refuge. So we've come a really long way, and we've got a lot of stories in our history to tell. And wonderfully, 2020 was our 150th anniversary. So we had a lot of exciting celebrations planned, and they all got thrown in the bin quite quickly when COVID hit. But I think we managed to kind of pull it back on track pretty well. So we're really proud of the work that we managed to do last year. So I thought I'd take you through a few of the things that we did in the last couple of years to kind of be authentic and build that audience, and give you a few tips of kind of, I guess, you know, what you might be able to do through storytelling. So you'd think, given the work that we do, that we'd have a pretty easy gig when it comes to being authentic and meeting the needs of socially conscious consumers. We're literally on the ground providing these amazing services to vulnerable communities. But the services we provide are typically accessed in a time of crisis. So many of us may never access the services that Anglicare Southern Queensland provide. So for us, it's really important that we build long-term brand awareness and brand sentiment alongside any of those client acquisition campaigns that we might run, along the way. So when you need help and when it's crunch time, you think of us. So the first thing that we do on this slide to tell authentic stories is to find our hook. So for us in 2020, our hook was Queensland. So this is kind of how we connect to our audience and how we differentiate ourselves in a crowded market, and how we really link ourselves to the communities that we support. We changed our brand's red logo to maroon. We partnered with the NRL with a community partnership. We got lucky last year winning the State of Origin, not so lucky this year, so we timed that quite well. And we just tried to celebrate Queenslanders, particularly our Queenslanders, at every turn. We really recognised that 2020 was just changing rapidly. We were, pivot was our buzzword in the team, but we wanted to acknowledge it publicly. And we were really inspired by the words over the years of our state leaders who led us through floods and fires and cyclones. So I think it was Anna Bligh that said, when you knock us down, we get back up again. And as Queenslanders, we really stand by each other. So this is what our staff do every day. So we wanted to really kind of tie a lot of the work that we did to that. And it kind of just felt natural and authentic anyway. We also spent a lot of time introducing people to some of our traditional owners that work with us, landowners that work with us, and we really wanted to ensure that that respect and acknowledgement was woven through everything that we do. So we told a lot of stories about the work that we do in the space, but also created some artwork along with some of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff that went on to adorn our cars and our uniforms. We also, another thing that we did to kind of find our hook was using some external trust marks to help tell the story of our care and support. We know what we do and we know that we do it very well, but it's kind of like when you have a whole bunch of wine bottles in front of you and you pick the one with all the gold medals. We kind of wanted to try that out and just let people know that, we do really, really walk the talk. So if you move along to the next slide, please, Timo. The next thing that we did was try and find our people. So these are our celebs on the ground. We've got 3,000 staff to choose from, so there's a pretty good pool of them. And when COVID hit, we really wanted to find a way to celebrate them. So our staff were on the ground, a lot of them delivering frontline services in nursing homes and in people's homes. And it was an unknown environment for them. And at the time, we also learned that our fans are our number one fans on social media are our staff. It's kind of our staff, our clients' families. So we really wanted to create some content that would celebrate them in front of their peers, friends and families, but would also highlight the kinds of work that we do. Anglicare Southern Queensland's really known for aged care because that's typically the service that any one of us will likely access, but we do so much more than that. So this is a really great way for us to celebrate all those services. So we had a thank you campaign, which was real compliments that we'd received about particular staff members, and then we photographed those staff members alongside those. The staff loved those. They were all kind of geeing each other up on social media, so that was really lovely to see. And then we also did a campaign where we had a photographer follow our staff around for 24 hours. So we've got nursing homes where people might be receiving a call from a nurse at 3 a.m. and we've got youth workers out at midnight helping work with homeless young people. So we captured kind of all aspects of that. And then we also, throughout the year, I was trying to find the actual stat before, but we basically doubled our video production, and we filmed over 100 videos with our staff and clients. Some of this was self-filmed, I look at this and some of the branding's a bit off. We changed our mind every so often, but it was all done in a big rush. But the stories that come through are so authentic and real. And I think you don't need to spend a lot of money to tell those stories. And what was really great for us is we know that we're an incredibly diverse organisation with staff from all different cultural backgrounds and all different ages. I think our average age is in the mid-50s, and then we've got staff who are kind of in their 70s down to staff, in their early 20s. So it really shone through, and we didn't really have to try too hard to do that, which was really, really nice. And then just on the final slide, the third thing that we did was to find our heart or our wholesome content. So we always try really hard to advocate for the people that we support. This could be when we're recruiting for foster carers and child safety, or we're uplifting young people and women experiencing homelessness. We really try and ensure that our campaigns have an advocacy angle where possible. And so 2 campaigns that are really close to our hearts are Old Mate and By Request. So this is kind of advocating for elderly Queenslanders. So Old Mate Queensland was a volunteer recruitment strategy aimed at getting young people aged 18 to 35 to consider spending time with older people. We really wanted to tell the stories of older people outside of the usual retirement village ads. You don't lose your passions and personality, it's as you age. And it was really important for us to make sure that people kind of saw that and saw, that like I could be friends with June, she looks pretty cool. We've got the same interests. And I've been in a Dodgem car with June, and she's a mean driver. So we didn't really have to look too far to find these clients. We found them all on the Sunshine Coast. Did a beautiful photo shoot with them. Them seeing themselves on a billboard was worth it all, even if no one signed up for it. And we also partnered with Vice, who are a youth media company, and Flex Mummy, who's a social media influencer, to produce some content for that campaign, which just really helped us hook in with that audience. And that was, really, really easy. It was an easy one, to be honest. It kind of just flew off the page. And then just really quickly, By Request was another beautiful one that we did last year. We took advantage of all of the musicians in Australia being stuck at home, and we told the stories of some of our clients through song. So we had surprise performances from people like Katie Noonan and Kate Miller-Heidke for our clients. There was a lot of tissues required for that one, and we made Carl from the Today Show cry, so pretty good. And then we really these 2 campaigns really helped us increase our brand awareness with new audiences. So an 18-year-old might never access our services until they're 80, but hopefully it's kind of created that authentic relationship and connection to them. So we've got this really strong formula with our hook, our people, and our heart to go forward to kind of continue to tell these stories. That's me.
Thanks, Louise. That's fantastic, and really love the Old Mate and the by Request campaign that you guys are running. And I think the challenge for you guys is obviously you have so many audiences, right? And that makes your job a lot harder when you think about things like, hey, let's create some personas. You would sit there and you're like, all right, and how do we speak to all of them in an authentic way, and how do we tell enough stories? So I think that's not a position I would envy to be in, but you guys are doing a great job. Awesome. Let's move to our last speaker in the mix, Mali Hanun. I'm actually not sure. I'm just winging it here, how I'm pronouncing this. But born and raised in Australia, she had a previous career in teaching before she opened up her bar about 6 years ago. And she told me, though, that sometimes she's still a relief teacher. I'm not really sure where she finds the time to do that. When you do look at her Facebook page, you know why I'm actually saying this. But Mali, I hope you didn't take offense for the picture I chose on my first introduction slide, because I'm not sure how many people look closely, but this was your beautiful fashion tip piece on Facebook, which I think got about 1,000 likes as well. So Mali knows what she's doing to create engagement with a variety of unique content, and she's going to take us through a little bit about how she does it. So Mali, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Timor, and thank you for having me. Even though I'm feeling way out of my depths here with these amazing speakers, I am not in the marketing game, but as Timo said, I did open a bar about 6 years ago, and obviously knew that social media was an element of, needing to advertise and get the word out about my little bar. And I think in line with what everyone's talking about today, it wasn't very long until I realised how you do need to be yourself to actually engage. And I think that's probably the reason why my page has got a little bit of a following. You might have to skip to the next cue card. Yeah, so I think initially when I started posting about wine and beer and food, it had very little engagement, and it didn't take me long to work out that everyone knows that in a bar there's food and wine, and it's actually quite boring and that sort of thing. And then the more I became a little bit more creative with the things that I would post, I worked out that, yeah, people probably, or to differentiate yourself from a market, you probably do need to think outside of the box a little bit. And I stopped posting about those boring food and wine things, because obviously everyone knows when you go to a pub, there's going to be food and wine. So that made it easy to kind of start implementing maybe a little bit of me into the bar. And I think that's where the engagement and the following kind of started, and it's probably turned more into having a bar that is synonymous with also Marley, which people kind of respond to, I guess, which is good. So I've just got a couple of examples on here of a few posts that I did, you know, implementing the Queensland game last night or Wednesday night when that was. So, you know, I just, again, think outside of the box and do bits and pieces that people obviously find funny or engaging. And then on the day when they came in on Sunday, I was actually wearing my maroon hat. So I guess that consolidates the engagement, and they all feel part of the brand that is Cedar and Pine, which is good marketing, I think. You can keep moving on because I have no idea. And again, this is just probably another example of me being myself, because I actually do wax my upper lip, and obviously sharing that in opposed to, you know, having our masks come off and things like that. So again, people just find it engaging because it's me being myself, waxing my lip. And yeah, so I think through that, you might need to help me out here, Timo. I think what the other speakers were saying about just identifying who you are and being true to that is the essence of good marketing and advertising. And I think then everything else from your business just takes care of itself. So I think I am kind of living proof of that, because yeah, business. Yeah. Anyway, keep going.
This is your last slide, so you made it.
This is my last slide. Yeah, I made it.
Last slide. Yeah, so you're all done. The other one you can pull out later, but I actually removed it from here. Thank you, Mali. It's fantastic. And look, you know, I think what you have done, and for those that have not yet, you know, I encouraged you all to jump on the Cedar and Pine Facebook page, or I think the Facebook page is where you're killing it. But this is all organic engagement, and these are numbers, you know, that are almost unheard of in this present day. So I think that authenticity piece just comes through, and obviously, you know, for Mali, it's her and her bar. So it might be easier than for Louise, who has to, I don't know, unite a lot more voices, and the same, you know, when you think of Griffith University, and then I think for an organization like Tim, you know, where Who Gives a Crap sort of was founded based on some good principles, and it started with a smaller team, and then more like-minded people sort of say, hey, I want to work for this cool company, and they started to buy in. That's how you guys grew. So I think that's kind of what I loved about this session, when all these speakers were sort of lining up. You all have these different challenges, but you all kind of share the same message. And I think Natalie kicked us off beautifully, and we probably should give Natalie a little bit more time and that's probably where I want to kind of move into that Q&A session and direct the first question a bit more towards Natalie, as she's now heard all these different organizations speak, but has probably spoken the shortest so far. And I guess, you know, when we think about the scenario, I suppose, Natalie, all these organizations are so unique and different. Let's say you as an agency, you know, if you meet all of these individuals and they say, I need help with my marketing, not that they need it, right? But would you come in with the same advice, or how would you sort of prepare to have this conversation about branding and helping a brand? And this really links to one of the audience members' questions as well, who said, well, if you have, and I think the question was worded in a way, well, since you're an agency, do you create and communicate these values for clients if they're not really touched with their own values? Because I think you hinted towards that as well. So I think it'd be interesting to answer these two parts. How do you start that conversation with a client, and how do you help them if those values are not in line?
Yeah, so I think there's two sides. One, when you have an organization like Who Gives a Crap, which, you know, they're really clear from the start of, you know, who they are and what they stand for, and they might need help on how to communicate that. So you're starting from an easier point when you go, oh, great, you've got a great brand, great values. We just need to basically authentically communicate. But for, I guess, larger organizations that are not in touch with their values, I don't think it's something that an agency can try to, you know, do market research and go, here, I found what your target market is interested about, and we feel that you should, you know, do this or that. It really has to come from the leadership, because as an agency, we're not there. And like Timo said, it has to start with the people. So with whatever it is, so whether it's you know, one-man band or a large organization, it all starts with the why, which I know a lot of people probably are familiar with Simon Sinek. So it's really uncovering, you know, why does the organization exist? Why do, you know, they go to work every morning, and really try to understand that essence, and then put together in terms of the action plan, you know, whether it's one person or a large organization is different. With a small organization, you can go straight to the tactics and the plans and how you're going to convey that. Whether for a large organization, you have to start back to getting all the employee engagement, and you know, it's very internal before you even start going out to market with, you know, what your real promise is and how you're going to deliver that promise.
So you'll prepare to have these hard conversations with the bigger clients as well, where you almost say, hey, this is almost beyond what we can do for you. You actually, or do you then still say, look, I can help you facilitate this, but if it needs to come from the owners or yeah, some of the people that have been there maybe perhaps longest, you have these conversations with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's usually done through, you know, series of workshops and engaging different stakeholders and, you know, employee engagement. Because as well, like if you know, the leaders come up with something and they go, hey guys, this is what we believe in now, it's a bit different. So you have to really engage almost, you know, the whole company to really, so those values are really, you know, backed into and not just bolted on, as I said. So yeah, we definitely facilitate that. And then when it comes down to the taxes, it will be, okay, well, we kind of call it the values ladder. So you go through, you know, they usually stock how we have the best product and it does this. And it's like, okay, well, you have to keep, you know, working deeper and deeper and deeper. So it could be, you know, months before you get to that.
Yeah. It's certainly a tough journey. And I always talk about branding. It's like a marriage, you know, ideally, you want the customer to marry your brand for the rest of their life and keep coming back to that. And that's not easy. You know, that's something that really needs to hit those emotional triggers probably more often than the rational ones. And having, you know, sort of, I guess, transitioned into this point between here's some rational factors about how our products are great or our services are great and just go and buy it, versus the emotional part, which is more linked to the values of a brand. I wanted to ask probably the rest of you guys, Tim, Mali, Louise, how do you then define success on socials? Like, what is that for you? Do you have something that you look at specifically? And if so, what is that?
I'm happy to jump in, Timo. So for us, it's kind of not as much about the numbers. And like Marley's numbers are amazing. I need to share your page with our digital marketing manager. That's going to be very, very jealous. But for us, it's actually about the commentary that's happening on the social media. So where we're kind of sharing posts about our services, and then we might get comments saying, oh, you looked after my mum and you were fantastic. And, oh, you know, everything that this staff member does is amazing. Like that's actually where the goods are for us. And it's people seeing those authentic comments, and you can't really pay for those. So for us, it's yeah, much more about the commentary that comes along with the posts that we share.
So quality over quantity in your case.
Yeah. But it is one of those things you do have to be consistent. You know, I mean, the algorithm will punish you if you disappear for a few days. So you do have to make sure you're kind of consistently posting. And that does take a lot of effort and planning and work to do.
Yeah, and I'll have a follow-up conversation starter or question on that as well. But let's stick to the success piece at the moment. Mali or Tim, did you guys want to jump in?
I'm happy to say something here. So I don't, like everyone's talking about the numbers of likes that you get, but I think from a business point of view, you still have to, social media for me is still one element of trying to run a business, a small business. And what I'm trying to say is you just can't rest on 500 people liking your post, because that's never, ever 500 bums on seats spending money in your bar. So I actually think the numbers are irrelevant, and my Facebook page is more even just like an addition to the business. It doesn't drive the sales. And if everyone thinks I just put a post on social media and think my weekend's going to see me through, then I think that's a little bit misleading, because there is a lot more effort and hard work that needs to come in, and you've got to then have a product that meets the expectations, and then you've got to have, you know, good quality of food and drinks and all those sort of things that really Facebook isn't really the be all and end all of it all. So yeah, that's my 2 cents worth on that one.
No, that's great. So it's a piece and a puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking a bit about the importance of raising that awareness and reminding people that you're there. But in the end, if they come into your bar and, I don't know, the food is not good, which you have to work hard to make sure that that quality is up there, then obviously there's too much of a disconnect. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess I was keen to know whether you lose sleep, whether, you know, if you don't get 500 likes on a post these days.
I don't lose. I lose sleep if fish tacos didn't taste like the fish tacos should taste.
Exactly. That's where the true value sits for the customer when they're in the bar. The paying bums on seat, like you say. Tim, what about you? How do you define success on your socials?
The social element falls into a bigger conversation around the story you're trying to tell and the top of the funnel. So the way we look at social media is we do take high, you know, consideration of the metrics that come with social media. So whether that might be the engagement rate or the number of likes, but at the end of the day, it is still very much a vanity metric, as said previously with Louise, Natalie, and Marley. Like it doesn't always eventuate into a sale or some sort of end result that you're looking for, and that's totally fine. It's like you don't go into a bar and ask for someone's number straight away without communicating anything about you. You need to like introduce yourself, understand what you're about, make a connection, and then maybe you might give them your number, your card. And so we view it very much as a storytelling platform. Number one is it helps us tell the story, as Louise said. But we also really think about it as like, where does it sit in the funnel of where we think this person is at the stage of their customer interaction with our business. And so my advice would be anyone who's looking at social media is the be all end all, is it's very much kind of like the foundation to your business, and then everything sits on top of that. And so we look at it as terms of a top of funnel. It's a way to start the conversation and get them used to the brand, number one, and then they'll eventually like move down the funnel into a potential purchase. But it's a really good feedback loop. And so we'll regularly on a weekly level, test different messages, test different ideas as a way to understand where do we, what resonates with the customer, how do we then grow that further into the business. And then it's also just a way to have a conversation with the customer. For a lot of people, they feel really they don't feel a connection to a brand. And when a brand actually responds to them and says, hey, I've heard you, or makes a joke or adds a GIF or like has banter in the comment section, it's a really good way to make them feel like someone actually cares about their opinion, which a lot of people, that's just what they're looking for. And so it's all of those three combined. So it's like, yes, there's some metrics involved to understand if the message is right. Number two is to make sure that you're warming the customer up and to the brand and to understand who you are. And then the third one is to make a connection with them, because there aren't many other channels where you can make that sort of connection quite in that quiet speed. So success is all of those wrapped up. There's no one or be all metric that you can follow, but it's like brand. You can never really quantify it, but it is one of the most important things you can have, and it needs to be built over a long time. And so you just have to be willing to trust that brand is a bit nebulous, but it's really valuable, and social fits very much into that bucket.
Yeah, that's right. And if you don't remind people that you exist, they'll don't know about you and they won't buy from you either. So gotta remember that. Now, just because I think it fits here, this follow-up question, just in terms of money spent on socials, Louise and Tim, do you put money behind it? And when I say socials, I deliberately keep the conversation a bit broader, because that doesn't just mean we're talking here Facebook or Insta, we're talking about whatever channels you're sort of utilizing. So are you putting dollars behind your posts, or you're running ad campaigns? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we definitely run paid advertising. So that's how we think about it as a business. You have your organic channels, which are about how do you interact without any use of payment. And then we do also have our paid channels. And so that can go across Facebook, Instagram, whatever channels that we may use that time. I mean, we're in web 2.0 mostly. So everything is social media, like the news is social media, email. So like there are very few places on the internet now which I would consider not to have a social media element to it. So as a business, we don't really think about how one channel is more social than the other. It's almost exactly the same across the board. But we definitely spend money on Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, all of those common platforms that have a social media element. But we won't put money behind content for the purpose of getting engagement. We'll only ever do it when we're trying to work on an advertising campaign, which is about how do we connect with people that don't know who we are. You can pay for your content to reach an organic audience, but the numbers don't tend to back out very well. So the best thing you can be doing when it comes back to the message of this panel is if you're creating content like Marley, which just talks to the customer in a really unique way and identifies with people who are, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable manner or you connect with them, that's way better than trying to put money behind an organic post that doesn't have any relevance to the customer. So I should always start with what's the message you're trying to talk to the customer about, and then go from there. And if you want to use paid channels, fantastic. But I wouldn't recommend paying for content for the sake of a vanity metric like a like or a comment.
So Tim, do you then, just as a follow-up piece there before we jump to Louise, do you, just to clarify this, so are you then running mainly campaigns that would direct traffic to your page to push people towards a transaction, or you're doing it still for awareness purposes to raise just, hey, here we are, you've never heard from us?
Yeah, so we look at it similar to how I mentioned before as very boring, like for a marketing student, it's, very foundational basics 101, where it's like there's a funnel. You've got people who have no idea who you are, and then you have people who convert, and it's a funnel. And the idea is you want to bring as many people into that funnel as possible and eventually slowly move them down towards a purchase. So, there's for the two ends of that spectrum, you'll have a brand campaign. So that could be a billboard, a TV advertisement, a YouTube video, like a paid YouTube ad. It might be a social media post and that's about a warm introduction to the brand, that will not be focused on a conversion. They'll be basically like, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and this is what's in it for you. This is why you should care and how it's solving a problem. A Facebook ad where we pay money to reach people that we have not heard of us, who have had some level of awareness of us, but haven't actually purchased yet. That's where we'll be like, hey, you've heard of us before. Here's the reasons why we help solve your problem and more. Make a purchase and ask for a strong call to action. So you have to be very aware of like where the customer is in their journey of knowing your brand and the channel that you're talking to them with. There's very little point trying to ask someone to buy something from you straight away from a billboard, because they're gonna be like, who are you? What are you doing? There's nothing in it for me, go away. Whereas if you do it once they're warm and they understand your brand, there's a much higher chance. And then, you can look at, there's a lot of, marketing models around costs and CPAs and all sorts of fancy metrics. But at the end of the day, if they're not warm to your brand, it's going to be very hard to ask for a purchase. So that's how I would differentiate, is if you're looking at, a different message should be presented to the customer at a different part of the funnel where they are.
And Louise, is that how you guys approach it as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff Tim was saying really resonates. So we do put money behind paid ads, but they're typically ads. We wouldn't necessarily boost our content posts. One area where we do advertising, which I didn't really mention today, we have a sub-brand for foster care recruitment called UBU, and we've kind of pulled it away from the main Anglicare brand for a variety of audience reasons. But for that one, the ads would typically be sending people on a journey kind of through that funnel to get them to apply to become a foster carer. And then they go on a whole nother long journey. So yeah, for us, the advertising in terms of the UBU product has really been helpful, and that's how we've really reached people as opposed to any organic engagement. But what we see on the Anglicare brand is that it's we do kind of paid posts, but it's those conversations and the posts that we share about our staff and our services and our clients that really kind of drive that engagement, probably more so than the paid stuff. Like Tim said, there's a lot of vanity metrics, and I'm really cautious with the team that we don't over communicate the vanity metrics, because very hard for us to necessarily see an impact on the bottom line when someone might see a post on our Facebook page, but then not access our service for 20 years. So it becomes kind of quite difficult to immediately see that impact. And I think it's important that we don't put heaps of stock in, a post that gets 100 likes. Like Marley said before, it doesn't equal bums on seats. So for us, it's a nice to have, but it's not the be all and end all of what we do on social media.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And Marley, as a follow-up question, and for you, when you hear Tim and Louise speak, do you think about sort of, I guess, the fun posts that you make that are sort of just, hey, this could be fun, I'm just going to put this content piece out, versus, let's say, I'm trying to get more bums on seats, so specific call to action to get people into your bar. Do you think about that? And if so, how?
Yeah, I do. I don't. Yes, I do. In short, I do. And I don't know how I do it. I think it just comes a little bit more naturally to me, and I feel confident, I guess, because I do have such a small little loyal following, and I think doing it for so long as well, you just take the risk, and things don't always work for me. So I just think you got to take the risks and hope. I never let it get to hard if I don't get the response that I wanted, or I'll try a different method if it doesn't get the response I thought I would get. So I think I'm still like everyone else. I still feel like I've got to be brave enough to do something or try something different and hope it works. There's no real strategy behind it. I mean, is there ever, even if you are paying a consultant or doing it yourself, it's such a fickle world, and such, social media is so, everyone's feeds are so busy, and we've got influencers, and we've got, it's so chaotic online that I think you just have to learn how to relax and throw caution to the wind, and some things are going to work, some aren't, some you that you don't expect will get the reaction that you thought it would, and you just kind of ride with it. And I think that's the trick, is not to let all the likes get to your head, and not to let no likes get you down.
Yeah. And from Natalie's perspective, then, let's say a company comes to you and sort of says, hey, how far in advance should I be with my content creation? What should be my ratio between calls to action versus general, sort of rant messaging to remind people that we exist? Do you provide that advice? Do you have some general advice that you can give?
Yeah, so we normally, can be quite daunting to try to come up with what to post day-to-day basis. So most of, clients or businesses will have a schedule, but it starts with a content strategy. And like Tim was saying, is understanding, everyone else today, I think, understanding what channel, which channels are you using, and what's the purpose of that channel, and what kind of content you're going to use in each of them, rather than just go, I'm just going to post these on Facebook and share it across everything, but it's a link to an article, but Instagram is visual. So you really kind of have more like a overall roadmap of your content strategy. And then we always say leave space for authenticity. So even though you have, you might have a planned schedule, nothing comes, the posts that have the best result is when you have showing something that's happening in the office, or a story, or something that's really authentic and not planned. And like the team have said, it's not about buy now, click here, this is the new product, new features. It's really, it's a platform to connect with people, to show who you are, to showcase the personality. So we usually just say, do not, start putting just new products and everything on your feed. There's ads are for that, where you can target and select an audience. Whether social media is more about you and your personality and who you are as a business and what you believe in.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I think for those organizations that are perhaps a bit larger, that having that content, like you say, planned out to then allow space to be authentic rather than just sort of panicking from day to day is really good advice and really, really valuable. Perhaps one question when you think about the people that you're serving and the many audiences that you all have, let's ask this question that goes through a lot of people's mind in terms of the changing customer in light of the pandemic. And sort of this unique space that we have here in Australia. And we're going in lockdown, obviously, here in Brizzy, and well, not just Brizzy, but large parts of Queensland. So when you think back to last year, have you seen any shifts in the way that your audience is talking back to you or engaging with you, or what they like or what they don't like? And that's probably a question for really everyone here that wants to take a jump in at answering this question.
I think generally we found that people are like engaging a lot more and finding news about what's happening with a company through their social channels. So, websites are not updated as often, or, Google My Business. So if someone needs to know whether someone's opening or they're doing this or they're delivering, they usually tend to go to social media. Lots of DMs instead of, emails and contact forms. So it's really kind of adding that more direct access to the brand, rather than going through, contact us form, getting a thank you email. Someone will get back to you in 48 hours. So yeah, that's, I guess, the main one that comes to mind.
Awesome. Anyone else? Mali, for you had to close the place a few times, for example. Is that something that would have happened? Like, I'm sure there was more frustration perhaps, or have you noticed anything?
Probably just agree with Nat, a lot more direct communication, and probably a lot more people online for longer periods of time. And yeah, the bar obviously closes every time there's a lockdown and we can't operate, but I keep the social aspect going for entertainment purposes really only. And I guess the point of that is to keep the bar in the forefront of people's minds for when we do reopen. So
to celebrate the reopening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Tim, what about you guys?
We have an interesting product for 2020, like our experience of COVID was a lot different to Mali's. And so I wouldn't say necessarily with regards to, you know, we saw the biggest year of our business was 2020 because we sell toilet paper. And so we definitely saw some different trends amongst toilet as a toilet paper business. But one of the biggest things that that we're seeing across the board is, yes, e-commerce is growing, but we're seeing the brand loyalty is changing quite a lot with e-commerce. So basically, if you have a couple $1,000s and a bit of know-how on the internet, you can start a business with some Facebook ads, Shopify, and a supplier of any quality type of product. And so we're seeing a lot of brands come out of retail onto direct consumer that would have probably not have done for another 4 or 5 years, which is both a good and bad thing. And so we're seeing a lot, the customers now has a lot more flexibility and choice as to their brand. And so I think, to relate it back to this conversation, it's a really, what is helping brands keep their family of customers and help engage them and create a delightful experience is through their brand and how they behave as a real company. People love companies who act like real people, and you can call that authenticity. You can use whatever word that you enjoy, but the bar is set so low for most customer experiences that it doesn't take much to actually please the customer. So if you're using social media, if you're using email, if you're using whatever channel it is to communicate with your customer, if you can help show that you're a real person with a real brand with real people and real values, that will help retain the customer in that situation. And so I think we're definitely going to see post 2020 a lot more e-commerce and digitalization of products, but you're going to see a lot of people who do a terrible job at customer service and retaining those customers. You're going to see brands who do a really good job of it, and it's going to become very, very clear. So I think the opportunity for anyone who's wanting to move into marketing or the digital, well, business in general, is that there's a big gap for brands to be able to show their care, love, and attention for the customer and provide a delightful experience. A lot of people want to do fancy things like, fancy marketing, but if you can get customer service down to a point where it's a really fun experience, you are leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else in the industry. So I think I've kind of gone a long roundabout way to answer your question, but I think there's a big part of just be real, and a lot of businesses haven't caught on to that yet.
Yeah, no, that's good and valuable advice, and I think in general this is probably already the segue, as I'm looking at the time here as well, to kind of pose that one question that Brita wanted me to put forward to all of you, which is the theme, obviously, of this careers workshop as well. And that is essentially the piece around, if you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would it be? So I'm going to hand over to Mali, who originally had a whole slide on that to go, but I don't have the slide here, so you just have to wing it now.
Oh, I don't even remember what I wrote on that one. I think my piece of advice would be, from a working point of view, is always be the first person to enter a room and the last person to leave it. It's not mine, and it's the old cliche, but I do think there is a lot of value in that one.
Yeah, hard work pays off.
Hard work pays off.
Awesome, thank you. Who wants to go next?
Natalie's like, I don't want to touch it. I love that.
Louise, you didn't get to speak about the changing customer sort of.
Oh, so volunteering now. I'm terrible because I don't have just one piece of advice. I've got 3, but 2 of them are just life advice. So get a skin check regularly, drink more water, and don't be afraid to cry at work sometimes. I think I always used to be, I'm quite an emotional, empathetic person, and I think that's really kind of helped our team and the leaders in our organisation help us connect to our community and our clients. And I think I think it's good to bring your emotions at work to work. I've seen quite a few people that don't, and it doesn't necessarily work well, particularly in a caring, socially conscious organisation. So yeah, don't be afraid to cry at work. I do it often.
Thanks, Louise. That's good advice. Tim.
I think I would say there's two things. One is, I mean, anything we all say here is said by someone at some point. So I don't think I wouldn't try to think there's anything original. But the lesson that I learned and found myself learning is that there's never a right time. You're never going to be ready. You're not going to have all the ducks lined up in a row. So go for it now. And actually, Marley has a great neon sign, which I now kind of wish she was outside. But yeah, the time is now, or basically along the lines of like, yeah, all we have is now. I think it's actually really good. And basically the reason being is I have passed up on situations or not taken on situations because I didn't feel I was ready. And I'm never ready. I'm still not qualified for my job, and I don't think I ever will be qualified for my job. And I know that the founders of Who Gives a Crap feel exactly the same way and talk about it regularly, that imposter syndrome is real across the board, and it's a good thing. You should always feel imposter syndrome at some point. So as someone who's, whether you're leaving university or you've left university or you feel like there's an opportunity that is potentially a little bit out of reach, it's always worth going for it, because I know that there have been times where I could have had a different situation if I had gone for it. And then the second one, I'll take two, is I heard some advice a while ago, which I use quite regularly now, which is don't forget to go outside and lay in the grass from time to time. Stare up at the clouds, relax. We're not here for that much time, and don't spend your whole time working. So go outside and lay in the grass and have a chill.
It's good, powerful advice. Love it. Natalie, now, how are you gonna, you wish probably you would have gone first.
Well, probably kind of actually ties in a bit with Tim, which is just focus on your strengths or what you're really good at or what is, you're passionate about. I think before I started Lemon Tree, I started marketing, I was like, oh, maybe I did this product or I did this, or someone's already done it, or, you kind of think about all these ideas and to just kind of go, I'm just really good at marketing. I just do what I do. And so that's, I guess, how Lemon Tree started. So I think sometimes we get too focused on, trying to find ideas or trying to look at things. And so you never start. So if you focus on your passion or your strengths, I think everything starts to fall into place.
That's good advice. And I'm just seeing that I probably terribly neglected the chat room here as well. Brita, you can jump in if there's.
That's no problem. There was one, and everybody doesn't mind. Bav there had a question. Firstly, I'd like to say thanks. Thanks, Bav. I really appreciate all the ideas shared here. They were amazing. I'd ask, these brands were and are inherently engaging in moral acts in business. Do you ever have to market and create a positive image of a company that is inherently infamous or engages in unethical trade? I'm guessing, Natalie. I'm guessing.
We've had first meetings that probably don't go into second meetings or anything else. And kind of have to divorce the client fairly quickly. When you kind of, they say, yeah, I understand all of these brand or whatever, but I don't care about that. Just get me to here. So it's like asking an engineer to build the bridge without any pillars or foundations. It's just not going to work. So yeah, the answer is no, because even if we said, okay, fine, let's do it, we know it's not going to work. And so the relationship's not going to work and it's going to be worse. So yeah, we've had a few, but usually turns into, sorry, we can't work together.
Perfect. And the other one, and this is one I'm kind of keen to find out about. What's your opinion about using influencers in your marketing strategy? Me personally, when I see too many of those beautiful people, I just come off social media very angry. So I definitely like to keep it real. And I think that's why, Mali, and your messages really resonated with me. But do any of the panel have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've used influencers in the past, but we use them in a very different way. So I think if you go on Instagram now, you'll see, hundreds of influencers all marketing the exact same product, which is always a little bit suspicious how much they love it. But for us, it's really about kind of finding connection with influencers. So someone who's able to kind of share the values of your brand and tell that story. So, our partnership with the NRL is a prime example. We're able to kind of introduce a new audience through the power of a footy player. But yeah, I think it can come with a few bits of barbed wire wrapped around it, depending on what you're marketing. And I think you've got to be careful about how many influencers maybe that you engage, because it starts to get a bit saturated. As just a consumer, I notice that a lot.
Perfect.
I can jump in. We use influencer marketing, and we have done for quite a number of years now. I think the first campaign I started was around 4 years ago. Influencers has been a little bit hijacked by the Instagram sitting on the Maldives in a perfect bikini type of deal. And that does sell product for certain things. But the influencer, as Louise mentioned, is not an Instagram model. It's someone who has a community who they believe is authentic and who they trust. And so you can work with people who aren't quote unquote influencers and still have a very similar experience. So it could be someone who, an NFL player who believes in the brand and shares that brand with their community. In terms of like how we work with influencers or who gives a crap, is I don't focus on social media. I tend to find that it doesn't work very well. You have a really quick spike of awareness of the brand and then it disappears when the next post goes up the next day. What works really well that we've found is if you work with either bloggers or YouTubers, and that works because that content stays up forever and grows in what's called evergreen content value. So day on day, it builds up momentum in the search engines and can live on for quite some time. So there are influencers that we've worked with 4 or 5 years ago who are still bringing revenue from a YouTube post they did then into the business. So my 2 bits of advice there is, 1, don't look at influencers as a model on Instagram. It could be anyone, anywhere that has a community that they trust. And I would also think about what's the purpose of that interaction. And quite often it can be a brand building or storytelling experience, or it can be to sell a product right here and then. But I think it's good to almost look away from Instagram and look elsewhere in the world and go, how could I work with an influencer? An influencer could be, like an influencer could be someone who works with Louise. It could be, a grandma who has a whole bunch of 10 other friends who want to make a product, and then they sell it to their friends and they go from there. So the idea of quote unquote Instagram influencers is a little bit narrow in the most perception of the world. If you widen that view, you'll find a lot of untapped value that people aren't recognizing, and it won't feel inauthentic or shallow.
A good point. Great. Well, look, Timo, I'm going to hand it back to you. I've got 2 of those questions. I just want to say to all our attendees that if we haven't got around to answering your question, please feel free to either reach out to the panel via LinkedIn, or you can reach out to us through our industry mentoring program at griffith.edu.au email, and we can try and respond to those offline. So I'll be quiet now and send it back to Timo. Thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you, Brita. And yeah, I know there's lots of great questions. I was just catching up with a few of them. So it'd be great if you, maybe engage directly with the speakers. They all have been agreeing to sharing their wisdom beyond this. And I think all of them have some really fantastic advice to give. I hope, Brita, they all said yes to becoming mentors at Griffith University as well. So I'm sure that's going to add a lot of value. Look, I don't want to take a lot of additional time away. I think Nicole has a few sort of wrap up slides that she wants to go through. So I think it was a delightful session with a lot of value. I feel like we could chat for much longer, but I still have to drive to the Gold Coast to avoid this lockdown at 6 o'clock. And I know we went a bit over time, but yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the diverse sort of feedback and insights that all of you have shared. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you at different points in time in the the future. So I'll hand it now over to Nicole to wrap it up and bring it home.
Okay, thanks for that, Timo. And thank you to our incredible panel, Natalie and Tim and Louise and Molly. It's been amazing to hear your diverse perspectives and to get some insight into your diverse experiences. You know, there's so much in common, but you know, slightly different ways of doing things and different approaches. And I know that our group of students and professionals online found the session inspiring and informative and practical. So thank you so much for being online and sharing all of your wisdom with us. And Timo, thank you for guiding the discussion so well. I think we just, had an amazing session. So thanks for being here, and to all of our attendees online, thank you for being here as well. Just a couple of things before we wrap up. We have our next upcoming Industry Insights event, which is happening in July. And so we are focusing on the law industry, and with the catchy title of Legal Action 2021. And if we read ahead, we can see that we are looking at economics, building, women in IT, healthcare. So stay with us for our monthly Industry Insight sessions. Next slide. Thanks. If you would like to catch up with this session or any of our previous or future sessions, you can visit us online at our Industry Insights webpage. I know that the discussion here was so full of riches that I'll be going back to listen again, and highly suggest that you do the same. Next slide. Just a plug for our Griffith Industry Mentoring Program, which has been in operation for 27 years. During that time, we have had the privilege of connecting Griffith students to industry professionals for career development, networking, and confidence building. We do still have some spots open for mentees for trimester 2, 2021. So if you'd like to be involved, get in touch with us ASAP. Matching officially closes tomorrow, but we'll be facilitating some additional matches past the deadline. And last slide, next slide. Thanks, everyone. I hope you all get home safely and have a productive, quiet, and enjoyable lockdown. Thanks once again. Good night.